something incredibly theatrical right now, you know?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You're picturing someone, I don't know, standing on a stage, yelling at the sky, engaging in these really intense, highly emotional rituals. Maybe they're making loud, aggressive declarations into the atmosphere.
Right, like they're casting out the darkness with sheer willpower.
Exactly. Because Hollywood, and honestly, just a lot of modern culture, has presented this concept as this massive, mystical spectacle. It feels like an action movie where you are the lone hero.
The cultural conditioning there is just so strong. We've basically been trained to view this concept as a localized high adrenaline event.
Yeah, totally.
It's something you sort of hype yourself up for, almost like a prize fighter stepping into a ring.
Yeah.
The assumption is always that to participate in this reality, you need a massive surge of adrenaline.
Or like a specific emotional peak, right?
Exactly, or some sort of profound mystical train.
But then, you step into the world of the actual historical and theological text we're looking at today, and suddenly that entire Hollywood image just evaporates.
It completely falls apart.
It does. We're looking at a landscape that is, honestly, stunningly ordinary. It's not about yelling louder than your problems. It's about sober, daily, almost mundane discipline.
Which is so much harder, honestly.
Right. So today, we are taking a comprehensive deep dive into the absolute deconstruction of the armor of God, which is found in the ancient text of Ephesians chapter 6.
And we are working from two incredibly rich sources today that approach this ancient text from, well, complementary angles.
Yeah, let's talk about those.
So first we have the Manual Beriano. This is a highly detailed, historically grounded theological textbook.
It's dense.
Very dense. It doesn't just skim the surface. It excavates the original Greek vocabulary, the first century Roman historical context, and the systematic theology behind the whole metaphor. And then, pairing with that heavy theology, we have this highly pragmatic source titled How to Dress in the Armor of God in Daily Life.
Which is super practical.
Exactly. This second source is essentially a boots-on-the-ground psychological and behavioral guide.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because our mission for this deep dive is to take these two sources, decode this ancient military metaphor piece by piece, and, translate it into a tangible daily routine that you can actually use tomorrow morning.
Yes.
We want to show you how this framework is actually a blueprint for mental clarity, emotional stability, and profound spiritual peace. But, and this is key, we are stripping away all the mysticism.
And that stripping away of the mystical spectacle is, well, it's the foundational premise we really have to establish before we even look at a sword or a shield.
Definitely.
The Manual Beriano is extremely explicit about this. The armor described in Ephesians is not a visualization technique.
But you don't just close your eyes and imagine it.
Exactly. You don't sit cross-legged, close your eyes, and imagine like a shiny metal helmet lowering onto your head to suddenly feel protected.
Which I think is what a lot of people actually try to do.
Oh, they definitely do. But it's not a symbolic incantation you recite to banish bad vibes, you know? It is an objective spiritual reality that you live out through active conviction and behavioral obedience.
Which means, if we just jump straight into talking about weapons and armor, we are going to completely misinterpret what they're actually used for.
100%.
We need the lay of the land first. We need to understand the battlefield itself, and that requires zooming out and looking at the entire architecture of the book of Ephesians.
Yeah, and the structural context of this ancient letter is arguably the most important piece of evidence we have for misunderstanding the armor.
How so?
Well, the book of Ephesians is only 6 chapters long, and the author, the Apostle Paul, dedicates chapters 1, 2, and 3 entirely to the concept of identity.
So identity, no armor yet.
None. He outlines, in painstaking theological detail, who a believer is, what their secure position is, and what has objectively been done to rescue them.
So it's purely foundational.
Exactly. Then, the text hits this massive pivot point at chapter 4. Chapters 4 and 5 shift drastically from high theology to extreme practicality.
Right, like how to actually live.
Yeah, it becomes a manual on how to live out that secure identity on, a random Tuesday afternoon. It covers how to pursue personal integrity, how to manage your temper, how to interact with your family, how to conduct yourself in your workplace.
Just normal stuff.
Right. It is laser-focused on the quiet, daily pursuit of holiness and relational peace.
Okay, let me make sure I'm visualizing this structure correctly.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like reading an intricate, detailed manual for building a beautiful, peaceful, highly functional house.
Right, that's a great way to look at it.
So for 5 chapters, you are pouring this massive concrete foundation. That's the identity piece. Then you're framing the walls, putting on the roof, installing the plumbing, and moving the family inside to live in peace. And that's the daily obedience and relational harmony piece.
Yes, exactly.
You spend all this time establishing this beautiful domestic reality, and then at the very end of the manual, the final chapter is suddenly about installing a military-grade, high-tech security system.
That is a brilliant analogy. I mean, you wouldn't install a multi-million-dollar security system on an empty dirt lot.
Right, there's nothing to protect.
Exactly. The security system has no inherent value without the house it is designed to protect. And that is the exact structural point the Manual Buriano makes regarding Chapter 6.
Oh, wow.
The armor of a god is only introduced at the very end of the letter. The armor does not exist so you can go out and put on a spiritual show or act out a fantasy.
Right.
The armor exists specifically and solely to protect the quiet life of obedience and identity that was just meticulously constructed in the first 5 chapters.
Which completely flips the script on how we view spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't have the house, like if you aren't actually pursuing honesty or caring for your family or resting in your identity, the armor is irrelevant.
Yeah.
You literally have nothing to protect.
That's the reality.
Yeah.
And furthermore, the text gives a specific prime directive before it even starts outlining the gear. The core command is, "Be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might."
Notice the total absence of self-reliance there.
Exactly. Notice what it doesn't say.
Yeah.
It doesn't say, "Be strong in your intense emotional state." It doesn't say, "Be strong in your ability to yell decrees."
Yeah.
You are drawing strength entirely from an external source, the Lord.
But I want to push back on this traditional concept of fighting for a second. Because, you know, when you and I hear the word war or battle, our modern minds instantly jump to the idea of taking territory.
Right, conquering.
Yeah, we picture aggressive, forward-moving infantry assaults, storming the beaches, conquering new ground. But when I was reading through the source material, I noticed the text repeatedly emphasizes something entirely different.
It really does.
It uses the Greek word histemi, which means to stand. Why does this manual keep insisting that the goal is to stand firm rather than to aggressively attack and conquer?
Well, the Manual Buriano draws a crucial distinction here regarding the nature of the enemy and the nature of the war itself. The text explicitly states that this is not a struggle against flesh and blood.
That's not people.
Right. You are not fighting your annoying neighbor, your toxic boss, or a political party.
Even when it feels like it.
Especially when it feels like it. The enemy is a real, intelligent, spiritual opposition. And because the enemy is spiritual and primarily operates through deception and accusation, your mandate changes. You are not called to invade hell and conquer the devil's territory. Christ already won the ultimate victory. Your designated task is simply to hold the territory of your own mind, your own heart, and your own life of obedience.
Wow, that's such a different perspective.
Yeah, the text repeats variations of the phrase so that you may be able to stand firm, and having done everything to stand firm. The primary objective of the armor is to resist. It is to not fall down, to not back away in fear, and to not be dragged off your post by a clever deception.
So it's not about being the lone wolf action hero who single-handedly storms the enemy castle with, explosions going off in the background.
Not at all.
It's about being the disciplined guard who simply refuses to abandon their post, no matter how intense the pressure gets.
Exactly. And to illustrate why this matters, our practical source outlines the devastating contrast between an unarmed person and an armed person.
Okay, let's hear it.
Think about how a person lives when they are entirely unaware of this war, or when they just refuse to put on this metaphorical gear. Without this protection, they are tragically vulnerable.
Yeah.
They are easily deceived by cultural lies. They are mentally paralyzed by lingering guilt from their past. They are emotionally unstable, and they're constantly knocked off balance by changing circumstances.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. They live in a reactive state of perpetual anxiety. But the armed believer, the sources describe them as sober. They are firm.
I love that word, sober.
Yeah. They have an internal baseline of peace that remains untouched, even when external pressures are absolutely crushing them.
Man, I want that kind of stability. I think everyone listening wants that kind of stability. So to understand how this ancient security system actually produces that psychological and spiritual resilience,
Right.
we have to look at the gear itself, piece by piece.
Right.
And this brings us to the very first item of the armor, which, surprisingly, isn't a weapon. It isn't a massive iron shield. It's a belt. The belt of truth.
And To our modern sensibilities, starting a list of heavy military armor with a belt seems almost anticlimactic.
It really does, like a belt. That's it.
Right, but in the historical context of a first century Roman legionary, the belt, the balteus or cingulum, was the absolute foundational piece of the entire kit.
Wow, okay.
It wasn't just a decorative accessory. The Roman soldier wore a tunic, which was essentially a loose knee-length garment. And if you are entering a life-or-death combat scenario, you cannot have loose fabric tangling up your legs.
So that makes sense. You'd trip.
Exactly. The heavy leather belt gathered the tunic tightly against the body, allowing for rapid, unobstructed movement. But beyond that, it served as the structural anchor for the rest of the gear.
Oh, right, because everything attaches to it.
Yes. The heavy chest armor rested its weight upon the belt. The scabbard for the sword was physically attached to the belt. If a soldier marched into battle without his belt secure, his armor shifted, his sword fell in the mud, and he literally became a fatal tripping hazard to himself.
He defeats himself before the enemy even touches him. That is crazy.
Yeah.
And the text equates this critical anchoring belt with truth.
Right.
Now, when I hear the word truth, I generally just think of simple honesty, like making sure I don't tell lies to my friends or cheat on my taxes. That all belt is.
Yeah.
Just basic moral honesty.
That is a component of it, for sure. But the Manual Bariano breaks this concept down into three much deeper, interlocking dimensions. If you only view it as don't tell lies, you really miss the structural integrity of the belt.
Okay, what are the three dimensions?
The first dimension is objective. Christ himself as the ultimate truth. The second dimension is doctrinal. The gospel message as the unshakable truth of reality. And the third dimension is personal. Living a coherent, deeply honest life based on those first two realities.
So it's about alignment.
Exactly. It means your public persona and your private reality are perfectly aligned. You are not living in a state of hypocrisy.
This is where the practical guide really challenged me. Because here's where it gets really interesting. The belt isn't just about refusing to lie to other people. It is fundamentally about refusing to lie to yourself.
Yes, self-deception.
Yeah. Our source points out that without this belt of truth securely fastened, we engage in massive cognitive dissonance. We start justifying our own toxic behaviors. We will look at our active, destructive disobedience and rebrand it as, like, a season of struggle.
Oh, that's such a common trap.
We wear these elaborate relational masks to pretend everything is perfectly fine when our internal world is just completely falling apart.
The psychological insight there is profound. I mean, if you are masking your pain or justifying your compromises, your belt is completely unbuckled, your armor is loose. And the reason the Apostle Paul lists truth as the very first piece of defense is directly tied to the primary tactic of the opposition. The enemy is not described primarily as a monster with fangs. He is described fundamentally as a liar and a deceiver.
Right, his weapon is lies.
Exactly. His primary weapon is disinformation. If you are not securely belted in objective reality, if you are comfortable lying to yourself and hiding from God, then any external lie can seamlessly slip into your mind.
Because you're already lying to yourself.
Yes, you will fall for emotional manipulation, you will swallow toxic ideologies because they appeal to your pride, and you will constantly confuse your own internal emotional turbulence with actual spiritual warfare.
Wow. So the belt organizes your reality. It secures everything. Yeah. But once you are anchored in the truth, you need heavy protection for your core.
Crucial protection.
And that brings us to the second piece, the breastplate of righteousness. In the Roman context, this was the lorica segmentata, these overlapping bands of iron that protected the chest, the heart, the lungs, the liver, the vital organs.
The parts you can't live without.
Exactly. If you take a solid blow to an arm or a leg, you might be injured, but you survive. If you take one solid, unarmored blow to the chest, you are done. It is fatal.
Right. And taking that into the spiritual and psychological realm, the enemy targets our vital organs, our heart and our core identity, with blows that are designed to be psychologically fatal.
What do those blows look like?
Well, the sources identify these blows as accusation, guilt, shame, and profound condemnation. It is that quiet, incredibly heavy whispered thought that says, you are a fundamental failure.
Or like, you've messed up too many times.
Exactly. God is finally disgusted with you. You are abandoned. Those accusations don't just hurt your feelings. If they penetrate your core, they literally destroy your ability to function. The breastplate is meticulously designed to absorb those exact impacts.
And the manual Beriano is highly specific about what this armor is actually made of.
Yeah.
It isn't just a generic sense of being a good person.
No, not at all.
It consists of two distinct yet inseparable parts: imputed righteousness and practical righteousness.
This is where we have to dive into some heavy but absolutely vital theology. Imputed righteousness is an accounting term or a courtroom term. It means that because of your faith in Christ, God legally credits Christ's perfect performance to your account. The judge's gavel has already struck. Your position before God is legally, permanently secure, regardless of your daily fluctuations.
So that's the imputed part.
So it is imputed. Practical righteousness, on the other hand, is your actual daily conduct. It is the real-time obedience and integrity you pursue on, a Tuesday afternoon.
Okay, I have to stop you there and ask a genuinely challenging question, because I guarantee you someone listening to this is feeling a massive spike of anxiety right now.
Lay it on me.
If this protective breastplate includes my daily practical behavior, doesn't focusing on that just lead to a crushing burden of guilt? Like, if the integrity of my armor depends on me being good, aren't I going to be constantly terrified of taking a fatal hit on a day when I lose my temper or make a terrible mistake?
That anxiety is exactly why understanding the correct order of those two concepts is literally a matter of life and death.
The order matters.
The order is everything. The manual Beriano makes a critical, non-negotiable point. Imputed righteousness always comes first, and it is the only thing that fuels your practical obedience.
Wait, really?
Yes. You do not pursue daily obedience in order to somehow earn or forge the breastplate. You wear the impenetrable breastplate of imputed righteousness so that you can pursue obedience safely.
Oh, wow.
Because your core identity and your legal standing are completely objectively secure in what Christ did. When you inevitably do mess up, when you lose your temper or fail morally, you are not destroyed.
You don't lose your standing.
Exactly. You can confess that failure immediately without the paralyzing fear of being cast out.
Because I don't have to hide the mistake from God to maintain my status. I don't have to engage in the hypocrisy we talked about with the belt of truth.
Precisely. The breastplate of imputed righteousness gives you the profound safety required to look at your own failures with brutal honesty. You can say, yes, I completely failed today, without that failure equating to, therefore, I am worthless and condemned. The breastplate absorbs the condemnation, allowing the conviction to lead to actual growth.
The sources paint such a vivid, heartbreaking contrast here. Like, imagine living your daily life without the breastplate. The text describes the sheer grinding exhaustion of constantly trying to be good enough on your own merits.
It's a treadmill you can never get off of.
Yeah, you are perpetually terrified of being exposed. You are devastated by a single critical comment or a single moral mistake. You wake up every morning anxiously wondering if God is mad at you today based on your performance yesterday.
Which is how so many people live.
It really is. But the armed believer, the person actually wearing this breastplate, possesses this profound, almost baffling emotional stability. They know their standing depends entirely on Christ's performance.
Yeah.
So when the accusation comes, flying through the air whispering, "You are unworthy and pathetic," the breastplate deflects it because the armed believer's immediate response is, "You are absolutely right. I am unworthy on my own, but my righteousness isn't derived from my perfection. It is derived from Him."
That unflinching emotional stability is the ultimate hallmark of a secured breastplate. Consider the enemy's economy of effort.
What do you mean?
Well, he doesn't even need to expend the energy to launch a massive, overt attack against your life if he can simply whisper a lie that convinces you that you are already defeated by your own guilt.
Oh, that's incredibly efficient.
It is. If he can get you to drown in shame, you take yourself out of the fate. The breastplate prevents that fatal internal bleeding.
Okay, so we have our core secured. The belt is anchoring us in honest reality, and the heavy iron of the breastplate is protecting our vital organs from the crushing weight of condemnation.
So far, so good.
But there's a fatal flaw in heavy infantry armor. If a soldier is perfectly armored, wrapped in iron, but cannot hold his ground, when 100 pounds of opposing force slams into his shield line, he falls backward.
He goes right down in the mud.
Exactly. And once a heavy infantryman is flat on his back in the mud, his breastplate is practically useless. The enemy simply steps around it.
Yeah, mobility is gone.
That functional vulnerability is exactly what leads our sources to the next critical component of the gear: traction. This brings us to the feet and the shoes of the gospel of peace.
And again, to understand the mechanics of this protection, the historical Roman context is everything. When Paul mentions feet, he isn't picturing a comfortable pair of modern running shoes.
Or like light sandals.
Right. The Roman soldier wore a very specific, highly engineered piece of military footwear called the caligae. These were heavy leather half boots, but their defining feature was the sole. The bottom of the caligae was thickly studded with heavy iron hobnails.
So they were essentially ancient, heavy-duty athletic cleats.
That's exactly what they were.
Which is brilliant when you think about the reality of an ancient battlefield. It wasn't a pristine paved parking lot. It was dirt. And after thousands of men have been marching, fighting, and bleeding on it, that dirt turns into thick, slick mud.
It's a mess.
Trying to hold a defensive line in smooth-soled sandals would be like trying to play defensive tackle in an NFL game on a rain-soaked grass field while wearing nothing but smooth dress socks.
You wouldn't stand a chance.
It literally does not matter how incredibly strong your upper body is or how perfectly forged your helmet is. The absolute second the opposing line pushes against you, your feet are going to instantly fly out from under you. You have zero traction. You lose your balance and you are trampled.
And that loss of balance is the exact vulnerability the enemy exploits. The spiritual traction that prevents that deadly slip is defined by the text as peace. But, and this is important, the Manual Buriano is extremely careful to rigorously define this term.
Because we usually get it wrong, right?
Oh, completely. It is fundamentally not just a warm, fuzzy feeling of tranquility while listening to soft music. It is an objective reality with 4 distinct layers.
Okay, let's go through the layers.
First, it is peace with God, meaning you have the absolute theological certainty that you are no longer under his wrath or judgment.
Okay, that ties back to the breastplate.
Exactly. Second, it is the peace of God which acts as a psychological garrison, guarding your actual emotions from descending into chaos. Third, it is peace with others, meaning you are actively refusing to carry around the heavy baggage of bitterness, resentment, and relational division.
That's a tough one.
It is. And finally, it is peace as a mission, meaning your feet are actually moving, ready to advance this stabilizing gospel to other people.
So to really understand how these cleats work, what does it look like when a person walks into their day without these shoes on? The practical manual states the lack of peace literally takes off your shoes.
It absolutely strips you of your traction. If you are holding on to deep, toxic resentment against a family member who wronged you, or if you are nursing a grudge against a coworker, your shoes are off.
Wow.
If you secretly harbor the fear that God is just waiting around the corner to punish you for a mistake you made 10 years ago, your shoes are off. You might feel fine while you were just standing around in the sunshine, but the moment pressure hits, and pressure always hits, you are in serious danger.
Because you have no grip.
None. The second a crisis erupts at work, or you take a sudden financial hit, or a friend offers harsh criticism, the opposing force hits your shield. Because your shoes are off, you instantly slip. You slide violently into anxiety, or you react with explosive anger, or you collapse into despair, all because you had no grip on the fundamental reality of your peace.
You are just sliding wildly all over the mud, completely reactive to your environment, but with the shoes securely laced, you still take the hit. The pressure is still real.
Oh, absolutely. The conflict doesn't disappear.
Right. But the heavy iron nails dig into the dirt. You feel the immense weight of the conflict, but your feet remain planted. You do not lose your psychological balance.
That's exactly it.
And speaking of taking those heavy hits, this brings us to what might be the most dynamic and iconic piece of defensive gear in the entire arsenal: the shield of faith.
Yes.
Now, I have to admit, my mental image was completely wrong here. When I picture a shield, thanks to fantasy movies and video games, I usually think of a knight's little metal heater shield.
Right, like something Captain America would use.
Yeah, maybe something the size of a large dinner plate that you use to actively swat away swords. But that is not what the Greek text or our source is describing at all.
Not even close. The Greek word Paul uses here is thurios, which refers specifically to the massive Roman legionaries' scutum.
And how big was that?
This was not a small parrying shield. This was a massive semi-cylindrical wooden door. It was roughly 4 feet tall and 2.5 feet wide. It covered the soldier entirely from the knees to the eyes.
Wow, so you literally hide behind it.
Exactly. It was constructed of laminated strips of wood, bound with iron, and tightly covered in thick leather or canvas. And the Manual Buriano highlights this brilliant historical detail. Before an impending battle, the Roman soldiers would actually submerge these massive shields in water, thoroughly soaking the leather.
And they soak them for a highly specific, terrifying reason, right?
Yeah.
They were preparing to face artillery.
Yes.
Specifically what the text calls fiery darts, arrows or javelins that had been dipped in pitch, set completely ablaze, and fired in massive volleys.
It was a psychological weapon as much as a physical one, and the text directly translates those historical physical fiery darts into our modern psychological reality. It describes these incoming projectiles as sudden intrusive thoughts, sudden spikes of debilitating doubt, sudden waves of irrational fear, and sudden intense urges of temptation.
Which completely reframes how I have been interpreting my own anxiety. The source points out the psychological nature of these darts. A fiery dart is almost never a long, carefully reasoned, logical argument against your worldview.
No, it doesn't give you time to reason.
Right? It is sudden, it is intense, it is entirely intrusive. It is that sudden blinding flash of panic at 3 a.m. that screams, you are going to lose your job and your family will starve.
We've all been there.
Or it is the sudden, overwhelming urge of a dark temptation that whispers, just look at this one thing, just take this one shortcut, nobody will ever know. The source makes it clear that the goal of the fiery dart isn't necessarily to pierce your vital organs immediately. The primary goal of setting the arrow on fire is to cause absolute panic.
Exactly. To create chaos.
Is to shock you, to burn you, to make you drop your heavy gear and run away in terror.
That psychological shock is the exact threat the shield is designed to neutralize. And the shield is explicitly made of faith. But we really need to pause and rigorously define that term, because modern culture has drastically distorted what faith actually means.
I completely agree, and I want to push back hard on how we usually talk about faith today, even in religious circles. We constantly hear phrases like, you just need to have more faith, as if faith is this internal subjective emotion you have to somehow conjure up from the depths of your stomach.
Like a feeling you can force.
Right, like if you just squeeze your eyes shut tight enough and feel confident enough and banish all negative vibes, that is faith. Or it's treated as a positive manifestation decree you yell into your bathroom mirror to change the universe.
Yeah.
But both of our sources define faith in a completely different, entirely objective way.
The contrast is night and day. Faith, as strictly defined by the Manual Buriano, is not an emotion you generate. It is not the power of positive thinking.
Okay, so what is it?
Faith is an active, constant, objective dependence on the unchanging character of God and the reality of His Word. It is a reliance on external reality, not internal feelings.
External.
Yes. Think back to that massive, heavy, water-soaked Roman shield. If a flaming arrow is arcing through the sky right at your face, you do not have to somehow feel incredibly brave for the shield to save your life.
You can be terrified.
You can be absolutely terrified. Your hands can be shaking. But if you simply crouch down and lean your physical weight against that massive wooden barrier, the shield does the work. Faith is not generating bravery. Faith is simply leaning the weight of your panicked mind against the objective, historically proven character of God when a sudden crisis hits.
Which leads to a crucial realization.
Yeah.
The shield of faith does not stop the enemy from firing the darts at you in the first place.
It absolutely does not. And this is a vital point for everyone's mental health. You will still experience the sudden, horrifying, intrusive thought. You will still feel the physiological flash of fear in your chest when the medical test results are delayed.
The attack still happens?
Yes. The presence of the dart does not mean your faith is weak. It just means you are in a war. But what the shield does is absorb the catastrophic impact. And because that shield of faith is soaked in the water of objective truth, it physically extinguishes the fire. It puts out the spiraling panic, the cascading anxiety, before it can catch your mind on fire and consume your life.
Think about the practical difference here. Imagine you, the listener, are walking through your day completely unarmed. You don't have the shield. Suddenly you get hit with a fiery dart. A sudden, terrifying thought about your physical health.
Okay, standard scenario.
Because you have no shield of objective reliance on God's sovereignty, the fire immediately catches. You spiral. You spend the next 6 hours frantically Googling medical symptoms. Your heart rate is elevated. You lose an entire night of sleep. You are completely consumed by a hypothetical scenario. The fire is burning you alive.
It consumes everything.
Now, imagine you are armed. The exact same terrifying thought enters your mind. The dart hits. But instead of spiraling, you consciously raise the shield. You acknowledge the fearful thought, but you lean the entire weight of your mind onto the objective truth that your life and your days are securely in God's hands, regardless of the outcome.
Right.
The darts still hit the wood with a loud, scary thud. But the water puts the fire out. You don't spiral, you go to sleep.
That is the perfect illustration of practical faith. Faith is not denying that the terrifying dart exists. Faith is actively denying the dart the oxygen and power to consume your mind.
So let's take inventory of where we are. We have covered the body. Your core is anchored in honest truth. Your vital organs and identity are protected by the heavy iron of Christ's righteousness. Your feet are deeply planted in the heavy cleats of peace. And you are crouching behind a massive, water-soaked shield that is absorbing and extinguishing incoming panic.
You are heavily defended.
Very heavily. But the enemy is intelligent. If they cannot push you back and they cannot burn you from a distance, they will change tactics. They will try to bypass the shield by aiming high.
Yep, the ultimate vulnerability.
We have to shift our focus to the most critical, delicate vulnerability of all, the human mind. And alongside it, we are finally introduced to the only piece of gear in this entire arsenal that is specifically designed for close quarters engagement.
We are moving to the apex of the armor. The helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit.
Let's start with the helmet.
Let's examine the helmet first. The Roman helmet, the galea or pericephalia, was a masterpiece of defensive engineering. It protected the skull, the cheeks, and the back of the neck. The logic here is brutal but simple. Just like in physical combat, one solid, unmitigated blow to the head is instantly fatal or incapacitating.
Game over.
Exactly. It genuinely does not matter if your breastplate is polished to perfection and your shoes have a perfect grip. If you take a mace to the skull, your brain shuts down and you are permanently out of the fight. The helmet is uniquely designed to protect the mind.
And the source material provides an incredibly insightful breakdown here. It says the helmet of salvation isn't just a generic concept of, like, going to heaven. It specifically covers 3 distinct time frames, creating a comprehensive canopy over your mind.
The past, present, and future.
Right. First, it covers the past, meaning you are definitively saved from the penalty of your past sins and mistakes. Second, it covers the present, meaning you are currently actively being saved from the power of sin and being transformed right now. And third, it covers the future, meaning you are saved from future wrath, and your ultimate glorification and eternal security are absolutely guaranteed.
It's all-encompassing.
It is. But how does knowing those 3 theological time frames practically protect a person's daily mental health?
Well, if we connect this theological concept to the broader modern picture of mental health and cognitive stability, the Manuel Bariano notes that without this specific helmet, a believer is utterly vulnerable to psychological torment.
In what way?
The enemy attacks the mind primarily with despair, profound confusion, and depression. If you don't have the helmet on, you will start doubting your entire salvation, your worth as a human being, or God's love for you, simply based on the fact that you had a bad day, or you're experiencing fluctuating hormones, or you made a mistake at work.
It's so reactive.
Yes, the whispered attack says, God has finally given up on you, or you've messed up too many times, there is no hope for your future. If your mind is not rigidly protected by the objective 3-tiered reality of your salvation, that your past is forgiven, your present is secured, and your future is guaranteed, those whispers of despair are intellectually and emotionally fatal.
Which leads me to an observation that has been blowing my mind throughout this entire deep dive. What does all of this mean for the mind? It strikes me how almost every single piece of this armor is fundamentally highly psychological.
It's almost entirely a mental battle.
It really is.
Yeah.
We are not talking about warding off poltergeists, ghosts, and goblins with magic spells. We are talking about deep structural mental resilience. The helmet protects against what the source literally defines as intrusive thoughts and depressive despair. It stabilizes your core identity so that your mind isn't forced to ride a chaotic emotional roller coaster every single day of your life.
It creates an impenetrable cognitive barrier against despair. It allows you to view your own life through the lens of ultimate victory, even when your immediate circumstances are bleak. However, as any military tactician will tell you, defense alone, no matter how impenetrable, does not win a battle.
Right, you can just hide forever.
Exactly. It
Right.
only delays defeat or maintains a stalemate. To actually neutralize a threat that has gotten past your shield and is actively grappling with you, you need the sword of the Spirit, which the text explicitly and exclusively identifies as the Word of God.
Now, just like our misunderstanding of the shield, the specific type of sword mentioned here is incredibly important. When I picture a sword in a spiritual context, I picture a massive, heavy, 2-handed broadsword, the kind you swing wildly over your head to clear a room.
Right, like something out of Braveheart. The Greeks actually had a word for that massive sweeping sword, the rhomphaia, but that is deliberately not the word Paul uses here.
What word does he use?
The Greek word used for the sword of the Spirit is machaira. This was the iconic Roman short sword. It was perhaps 18 to 24 inches long.
Oh, that's really short.
It is. It was not designed for wild, chaotic, swinging slashes from a distance. The Roman legionary fought in a tight, highly disciplined formation behind their massive shields. When the enemy pressed violently against the shield, the legionary would wait for a tiny opening, thrust the machaira out with brutal surgical precision, and immediately retract it.
So it's very targeted.
It was an instrument of exact, targeted precision. The source says the spiritual short sword is used to cut down specific lies, expertly expose hidden deception, and mathematically tear down false arguments that have erected themselves inside your own mind.
And the source adds a fascinating caveat. It specifies that this weapon is inspired, illuminated, and applied by the Holy Spirit. But I want to get extremely practical here.
Let's do it.
How does a normal person actually draw and use this short sword when they are in the terrifying middle of a battle? Let's say you, listening right now, are in the middle of a massive, suffocating emotional spiral. You feel completely worthless. Or you are intensely tempted to fall back into an old, destructive addiction. You are in close quarters combat with your own mind. How do you use the machaira?
Well, what they absolutely do not do is frantically grab a Bible, flip it open randomly, close their eyes, point to a page, and hope to miraculously land on a magic sentence that instantly cures their anxiety.
Like a magic 8-ball.
Exactly. That is not using a sword. That is treating the text like a talisman. The Manual Beriano is unequivocally clear. The short sword is utilized by having specific scripture memorized in its proper context before the battle begins.
Before it begins.
Yes. When a highly specific lie enters your mind, let's say the sudden, crushing thought, you are completely alone in this, nobody cares about you, and God has abandoned you, the armed believer does not swing wildly.
Right.
They draw the short sword of a specific, pre-memorized truth. They mentally thrust with a verse like, I will never leave you nor forsake you, or they recite Psalm 23. It is a surgical, exact strike against a specific, targeted lie.
Which is exactly how Jesus modeled warfare.
Precisely. If you look at the historical account of Jesus being tempted in the wilderness, he perfectly modeled the use of the machaira.
How so?
When the enemy tempted him with a specific physical hunger or a specific prideful shortcut to political power, Jesus did not just wave his hands and scream, "Go away!"
He didn't put on a show.
No, he quoted a specific, highly contextualized text from the book of Deuteronomy that mathematically dismantled the exact lie being presented to him. He cut the lie to pieces with precision.
I love how the practical guide contrasts a believer who is unarmed in this area versus one who is armed. It describes a tragic modern scenario. A person who relies entirely on a famous YouTube influencer or a charismatic podcast host or a deeply emotional worship song for their sense of spiritual truth.
That is so common today.
It is. That person is completely unarmed. They do not own a sword. They are just standing behind someone else who has one. If that influencer falls into a scandal, or if the emotional feeling fades away on a Tuesday morning, they are left utterly defenseless against the lies in their own head.
Because they can't fight for themselves.
Exactly.
Right.
But the person who actually possesses the sword, the person who has done the quiet, boring, daily work of reading and memorizing the text for themselves, can instantly, independently discern a lie. They don't need to call a spiritual leader to protect their mind for them. They can expertly parry the deception themselves.
That independence is the true power of machaira. And we really need to clarify one massive misconception here. This sword is not designed for attacking other people in the YouTube comment section.
Oh man, if only people understood that.
Right. It is not for winning political arguments on social media. It is designed almost exclusively for defending your own mind against internal deception and targeted spiritual temptation.
Okay, this has been an incredible breakdown. We have all the pieces laid out on the table now. The belt of honesty, the breastplate of secure identity, the heavy shoes of peace, the massive shield of objective faith, the psychological helmet of salvation, and the surgical short sword of the word.
It's quite the loadout.
It is. But here is the brutal reality check. If all of that magnificent armor is just sitting in a pile on your bedroom floor, it is completely entirely useless. It is just a heavy pile of ancient metal and leather. How do you actually put the suit on your body? And perhaps more importantly, once you are encased in all this heavy gear, how do you actually breathe inside it without suffocating?
This specific question brings us to a part of the text that I believe fundamentally reshapes the entire metaphor we've been discussing. Section 8 of the Manual Beriano is dedicated entirely to the topic of prayer.
Okay.
But the author makes a radical, paradigm-shifting statement right out of the gate. Prayer is not a piece of the armor.
Wait, hold on. If prayer isn't a piece of the gear, then what on earth is it?
It is the air of the battle. It is the very atmosphere in which the armor actually functions. The text points out that right after listing the sword, Paul's immediate command in Ephesians is praying at all times in the Spirit.
So it's constant.
Yes. You do not put on prayer like you put on a hat or a belt. You breathe prayer so that you do not suffocate under the immense weight of the battle. Without the constant respiration of prayer, the armor is just a lifeless, heavy suit.
That makes me think of an analogy. Imagine you go out and buy the most state-of-the-art, expensive scuba diving suit on the planet. You have the thickest thermal neoprene, the most scientifically advanced aerodynamic fins, the absolute clearest tempered glass mask money can buy.
The best gear available.
Right. You put it all on, you look incredible, you look like an absolute professional, you jump off the boat into the dark ocean. But you forgot to connect the oxygen tank to your mouthpiece.
That's not going to end well.
No. It does not matter how flawless your suit is. You are going to suffocate in minutes. The suit won't save you. In fact, the weight of it will just sink you faster. Without the oxygen of prayer, you just look like a well-dressed, highly theological casualty.
That is a phenomenal, haunting analogy, and it is perfectly accurate. The manual defines prayer in this specific military context, not as reciting a polite, sterile grocery list of demands to God before you fall asleep.
So what is it?
It defines prayer as absolute dependence. It is the constant, active act of breathing in the reality of your total need for God's strength. And this understanding raises an incredibly important, sobering question.
Which is?
If we have access to this impenetrable armor and the oxygen to breathe in it, why do so many believers completely fail to actually use it? Why are so many people living in defeat? Our sources outline several brutal, honest realities in Chapter 9.
Yeah, reading that list in Chapter 9 of the Daily Guide felt like a physical gut punch. It doesn't pull any punches. It says believers fundamentally fail because they choose to live by their wildly fluctuating emotions instead of solid objective conviction.
Yes.
It says they reject the quiet discipline required to maintain the gear. People want the flashy spectacle. They want the sudden explosive miracles and the emotional highs, but they absolutely do not want the quiet, unglamorous daily holiness of waking up early to read the text and pray in silence.
The guide also acutely highlights how profoundly distracted we are by the mechanics of modern life. Think about the sheer volume of noise we consume daily.
It's overwhelming.
It is. The social media algorithms meticulously designed by engineers to keep us mindlessly scrolling, the cultural glorification of overwork, the constant barrage of outrage news. The enemy's greatest, most effective tactic is rarely to launch a terrifying supernatural frontal assault to destroy a person outright.
Oh, he doesn't have to?
No, most of the time, his absolute best tactic is simply to distract them, to slowly bury them in noise and notifications until they voluntarily take the armor off themselves because it feels too heavy, or they just completely forget they're even in a war.
The text also calls out a massive trap that I know I have fallen into personally: confusing sheer activism and relentless busyness with true spirituality. I want to challenge you, the listener, right now with this thought. Are you confusing being busy with being armed?
That's a profound question.
Because you can run yourself ragged. You can volunteer at your church, you can work 60 hours a week providing for your family, you can donate to charity, you can do a million objectively good things, and you can still be completely suffocating inside that scuba suit. Because amidst all that frantic activity, you aren't actually breathing the quiet oxygen of dependence on God.
And if we connect this to the broader picture of mental and spiritual health, we see the tragic, inevitable result of this neglect. The manual details that living without the armor, living in a state of perpetual distraction, relying childishly on podcasters or leaders instead of cultivating your own sword results in a vicious, exhausting cycle.
What does that cycle look like?
It leads to a cycle of giving in to temptation, followed by overwhelming guilt, resulting in profound emotional burnout. And the tragedy is, it is not because the person isn't trying hard enough. They are often trying incredibly hard. but they are attempting to fight a deeply spiritual battle using completely carnal, natural tools. You cannot shoot a physical bullet at a psychological, intrusive thought. You cannot bandage a wounded conscience with a busier schedule.
You have to fight spirit with spirit.
Mm.
Okay, so we have deeply diagnosed the underlying problem.
Yeah.
We have meticulously defined every single piece of the gear. We know we absolutely must have the oxygen of prayer to survive. But I am a highly practical person, and I know you listening are too. We need to know how this actually works on a Tuesday.
We have to bring it down to earth.
Exactly. The Daily Guide source gives us something incredibly valuable here, a literal breakdown of a daily schedule in Chapter 11. We need to transition to the ultimate synthesis of this entire deep dive. What does an actual real-world 24-hour cycle look like for someone who is actively, successfully wearing this armor? Because if we leave this as just high-minded theological theory, we have failed.
I completely agree. The manual insists, above all else, that this is a practical lifestyle, not an academic theory. So let's walk through a normal day, as outlined in the sources. The routine starts the moment you wake up, in the morning.
Right, before anything else happens.
Before the chaos of the day begins, before you even touch your smartphone to look at your email, you affirm objective truth. That is putting on the belt. You are honest with God about your specific vulnerabilities for the day.
You're not hiding.
Exactly. Then you deliberately, consciously remember your secure identity in Christ. You remind yourself that you are forgiven and secure. That is securing the helmet of salvation on your head and snapping the breastplate of righteousness over your heart. And you do all of this while praying with a deep sense of dependence. You are actively breathing the air before you dive into the water.
So you are setting the structural baseline before the world has a chance to demand anything from you. Then we move into the afternoon. And let's be honest, this is when the day usually goes completely sideways. You are at work, you are tired, you're interacting with difficult people. The guide says this is the critical combat phase. This is when you must respond to sudden intrusive thoughts or sudden spikes of anxiety with objective faith, meaning you actively raise the massive shield to absorb the panic.
Yes, that's exactly when you need it.
You make a highly conscious effort to maintain your peace during a conflict with a rude coworker or an angry family member that is keeping your heavy shoes planted so you don't slip into an explosive rage. And when you face a complex ethical decision, you use the Word of God, the short sword, to cut through the confusion and make the right choice.
And finally, the day concludes in the night. At the end of the day, when the house is quiet, you evaluate your own heart. You use the security of the breastplate's imputed righteousness to look back at the day and honestly confess whatever sins, failures, or harsh words happened that day.
With no fear.
With zero fear. You do this safely, without any fear of condemnation, because the breastplate holds. You thank God for His sustaining grace. You take a deep breath of prayer, and you go to sleep in peace. This beautifully simple, profound routine completely moves the concept of spiritual warfare out of the realm of the mystical, yelling at the sky spectacle, and drags it right into the gritty, mundane reality of everyday human life.
It's about brushing your teeth, commuting in terrible traffic, facing an incredibly annoying coworker, dealing with a sudden, terrifying spike of financial anxiety when a bill arrives, and going to bed all while actively processing that exact reality through the psychological and theological lens of the armor.
It is entirely practical.
Honestly, listening to this specific schedule, it sounds significantly less like the life of an action movie hero and way more like the rigorous, unglamorous daily habits of a high-performance elite athlete. It requires immense sobriety. It requires relentless discipline.
To really cement this concept in reality, let's walk the listener through a highly relatable, modern, hypothetical scenario to see the armor in action. Imagine it is 3:00 p.m. on a Wednesday, and you receive a highly stressful, borderline aggressive email from your boss criticizing a project you worked on.
Oh no.
Based on the psychological profiles in our sources, how does the unarmed person react to this standard everyday event?
Oh, I can picture this perfectly because I've been this person. The unarmed person opens that email and immediately panics. Their heart rate spikes. Because they have no underlying peace, their shoes instantly, they're sliding all over the slippery mud of anxiety and defensiveness.
Right, traction is gone.
The fiery dart hits them right in the mind. The thought screams, my boss hates me, I'm going to get fired, I am fundamentally worthless. And because they have no massive shield of faith to absorb that dart, the fire catches immediately. That single email consumes their entire afternoon. They can't focus on anything else.
It takes over everything.
Later that evening, they snap at their kids or their spouse because they're carrying so much residual stress. They feel like a complete, utter failure as an employee and as a parent, meaning they have no breastplate protecting their core identity from condemnation. They become a total psychological casualty over a single 3-sentence email.
It is a devastating cascade of failure. Now contrast that exact same scenario with the armed person. They receive the exact same aggressive email. The external pressure is identical. The sudden physiological jolt of fear, the fiery dart, is still fired at them.
But the outcome is different.
Entirely different. The shield of faith physically absorbs the panic. They consciously lean their mind on the objective reality that God is their ultimate provider, not just this specific corporate job. The heavy iron cleats of the shoes of peace keep them firmly grounded so they do not instantly fire off an angry, reactive, defensive reply. They hold their ground. And the impenetrable iron of the breastplate of righteousness protects their core identity. They do not feel like a fundamental failure as a human being just because their boss is upset about a spreadsheet. They breathe in the calm oxygen of prayer, process the contents of the email soberly, and respond with measured wisdom.
It is the exact same email, the exact same Tuesday afternoon. But it is a completely fundamentally different human experience.
Yeah.
And the vital difference here, let's take a deep breath and recap this incredible paradigm-shifting journey we have been on today. We started by completely tearing down the modern cultural misunderstanding of spiritual warfare as this loud, mystical, theatrical event.
We left Hollywood behind.
We did. We walked through the dirt and mud of the ancient Roman armory to intimately understand the 6 pieces of historical gear. We saw the belt of honest, objective truth anchoring our reality. We felt the heavy iron of the breastplate of secure righteousness protecting our vital organs from the crushing weight of guilt.
Right.
We laced up the heavy cleated shoes of peace to keep our balance in the mud of conflict. We crouched behind the massive water-soaked shield of objective faith to extinguish the flaming arrows of sudden panic. We secured the psychological helmet of salvation to guard our minds from the despair of our past and future.
And the sword.
Yes, and we learned how to wield the precise, surgical sword of the Spirit to cut down specific lies. We realized that without breathing the constant oxygen of prayer, we will simply suffocate inside the suit. And finally, we laid out a highly practical 24-hour routine to actually live this ancient reality out in the modern world.
It represents a profound, necessary shift from constantly seeking a fleeting emotional experience to diligently building a resilient, unshakable lifestyle.
I want to talk directly to you, the listener, for a second as we wrap this up. The absolute reality is life is going to fire darts at you. You know this. The aggressive emails will come. The unexpected health scares will happen. The sudden, terrifying, intrusive thoughts will absolutely try to spiral your mind into paralyzing anxiety.
That is the nature of the battlefield we live on.
But the difference between living your life in a constant, exhausting state of reactive defeat versus living with a quiet, unshakable internal victory is not about you trying harder to be a perfect human being. It's not about yelling louder. It is simply about whether or not you consciously decide to put your armor on today.
I want to leave everyone with a final, somewhat provocative thought to mull over, building on the deep psychology of everything we've read in these sources today.
Okay, let's hear it.
If this entire elaborate set of ancient armor is so meticulously designed by God to protect your mind, your heart, and your daily peace, what if the enemy's most successful, brilliant strategy isn't to launch a massive, terrifying, supernatural attack against your life? What if his absolute best, most devastating move is simply to use the noise of modern life to convince you that there is no war happening at all? Because if he can convince you there is no war, you will just leave your impenetrable armor sitting quietly in the closet.
Wow. If you don't even believe you're in a war, you will never wear the gear. You defeat yourself by default. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Start practicing your armor today, right now. Anchor yourself in reality, protect your heart from shame, and hold your ground in the mud. Because at the end of the day, when you break your physical arm, the hospital x-ray shows a jagged line. The damage is clearly visible to everyone. But the relentless battles of the mind, the heart, and the soul, those are entirely invisible. You cannot afford to walk onto that muddy, invisible battlefield wearing nothing but your socks. Stay armed, stay sober, and we will see you next time.